Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I am talking about the Hisuian Arcanine and speculating about just maybe what it could be like in Gen 9 if it ever makes it into the game. And this is going to be a little bit of a quicker video because there's not really too much to talk about this thing. Going into the typing, this is a fire rock type, which initially it looks like it's a good typing because it only is super affected by 4 things, but 2 of those, that being ground and water, are 4x. That is honestly just really bad. Ground is very common in VGC, which makes this a not so good defensive typing at all. Even though it does have a lot of resist, the super effectives do really make it difficult to work around. Offensively, however, this typing is fairly decent, having 6 super effectives. Anyway, moving on to abilities, it's the same abilities: Intimidate, Flash Fire, and Justified. Now, Intimidate and Justified are both used in VGC occasionally. Flash Fire is a lot less common on the normal Arcanine, and so it would be on Hisuian form as well. Now, interestingly, the stats are slightly different. The special attack and speed stat are slightly lower, but it has a higher physical attack stat. So this is slightly more offensive while maintaining the same defensive stats and being slightly slower. Now this kinda gets a signature move, however I believe there is another Pokemon in PLA that gets access to this move, but it is called Raging Fury, which is a 90 power, 85 accuracy move where the user just becomes fixated on using it. And that's kind of strange because it doesn't seem like it gets any additional power for every consecutive use of it. It just stays at 90 power, which at 85 accuracy is really not a great move. I think there are much better options to use than this move specifically. Now, since this has the rock typing, it does get access to Rock Slide and Stone Edge, which are useful moves to have, and definitely having Stab on Rock Slide is great to have in any meta. And it does get access to a lot of the moves that the normal Arcanine gets, like Snarl, Wild Charge, Play Rough. Basically, it has a lot of the utility that the normal Arcanine has, so you can kind of play the same role with it essentially, with the only major difference being that it doesn't get access to Will-O-Wisp, but Intimidate does somewhat cover that. Now, the reason this video is going to be short is because there's really not much use for this thing, because its abilities combined with its typing are just not a good combination, and there are things that do its job so much better. There's almost no point in using this thing specifically. The only use case is if your Intimidate user needs to have powerful rock moves, and I just don't think that is enough to justify using this, because that's a very specific need, and I think you would be better off just separating the two entirely, because even compared to the normal Arcanine, this thing is just objectively worse. Having that rock typing makes it far too vulnerable to be a viable Intimidate switch-in, and that extra offense is not really going to help you, especially since the speed stat is slower. Now, one potential use case for this is it is quite strong against Charizard, and that Charizard cannot really hit it that well with its stab moves. However, aside from very specific matchups, this thing really is just not consistent. In fact, I think it's less consistent than some of the other ones we've talked about before. I think I would even put Avalugg above this in terms of just raw utility, because if you can get it up in Trick Room, then it actually has some use, and it has a very strong ice type move. This thing just doesn't have anything special about it. Now, there is a rock fire type that did very well in VGC, and that is Colossal, but it made very good use of Gen 8's mechanic, and it had a very useful ability for the format. This does not. It just has Intimidate and Justified, which Arcanine plays the role of those 2 abilities way better than the Hisuian Arcanine. And since Pokemon like Gastrodon never truly leave the meta, there's always going to be an answer for this thing in somebody's team. So it requires a lot of very skilled play to actually set this thing up properly and get it doing its job, which for most people is not going to be worth putting up with. This is the one I expect to see the least use of all the Hisuian forms in VGC. And while I do think you could still get a win with it, there are just a lot better options than this specifically. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.